My blessings and love to you. I am Aaron. You each have the opportunity to look back on your lives at times of ease and times of stress. I have the same opportunity, but in a broader sense, as I can look back at the lifetimes in which I learned the most. And sometimes, even often, they were the most stressful lifetimes. The man that I was lived in a village in the mountains. Mountain slopes rising high beyond the valley where our village was situated. There was a stream running through the low valley. There was a deep well that the community shared. Many of the farms were there in this fertile valley, and some just a little way up on the hillside. My whole family lived here. My wife, my children, my grandchildren, my brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews. It was my life, and I was happy. Sometimes food was scarce when the weather did not fully accommodate our need. But most of the time, life was okay. We were safe, and we had friendship and love. Beautiful scenery, and a deep spiritual practice. There came a time when there were heavy rains that literally brought the whole hillside down onto the village, burying it in mud. More than half of the population of the village died just in an hour. Farmers who had been just up on the hills, working their fields, could see this mud pouring down on the village from a distance. By the time they came back, it was too late. Everything was buried in this mud. Houses and humans. People were bereft, as I was. I could not find my home, my wife and children. My brothers and sisters' homes were buried. Several days went by, frantically digging, but almost no one who had been buried survived. Many people thought they would leave the valley. They were broken by grief and anger. But this had been my home. I had been born here, and my parents had been born here. We had no water. We knew there was a well and roughly where it was, but it was buried with mud. But a few of us, lacking anything else to do, perhaps more out of desperation, we began to dig and to carry loads of mud away, gradually revealing that well. First, just the site where it was, but then going deeper into the well itself, bringing out the mud. People said, "Why are you doing that? The well is gone." But of course, the well came from an underground spring. How could it be gone? We dug. We carried dirt away. We dug more. At first, it was the movement of grief. My heart was frozen, and I needed to act in some way. This was something to do. But after a few days, it became a movement of hope, of trust. The fresh spring is here, and we can reveal it. We will have water. We will survive. Then came the day, deep at the bottom of the hole, when somebody who was down there with the bucket and the shovel said, "I found it. The water is coming up." And as we brought the mud up in buckets and hauled it away, the deep spring was revealed and the well was cleansed. This deep spring became the heart of my hope, and for many other people as well. Life exists. A spring, of course, is a conditioned object. It will exist when the conditions exist. And yet the spring also has a hint of the unconditioned end, because it feeds from deep under the earth. And to some degree, while still conditioned, as long as the earth exists there, the spring will come up and refresh itself. We had water, we had food, new family units formed, bits of this and that broken family, people coming together to support each other, to give birth to life rather than sinking into despair and anger. Yes, we grieved terribly, but we also could envision a new and beautiful future. We would rebuild, and more wisely this time, further up the slope and not deep into the center of the valley. Homes put a safe distance up the hillside. We would love one another and take care of one another. Five years passed. I lived with my eldest son and his wife. who, married, had lived a little distance from my home that had been so totally buried. I lived with my grandchildren, nephews, and one brother survived, and dear friends survived. There is that simple statement: where there is a life, there is hope. Hope in a beautiful future in which we could be at peace with ourselves and with the earth. Within each of you is that deep spring. This is where the name Deep Spring Center came from. I asked it to be named this, reflecting on the story of my long ago history. To remember the deep spring within each person, which, when the rubble is cleared away, the fresh waters pour out. For the fresh water to come up out of the earth, you must be willing to regard the rubble and lift it away. As long as you keep pouring in more rubble by reprocessing is not the best word, by attachment to old anger, feelings of helplessness, fear. It's a way of feeding the rubble back into the well. When you are willing to work with your practice to reveal the deep spring, here is your strength. Here is love. Your practice is your way to dig out the mud, not just from the present life experience, but from all the accumulated experiences. You always have a choice to say, I despair. Well, you can say I despair and despair for as long as you wish, but eventually you have to move past it. I choose to move past the despair, however long it has lasted, and to find that which is awake and radiant, to find the awakened heart within me and within my world. I choose. John spoke of the power of intention. I choose. You cannot choose this awakened heart by trying to push away the feelings of negativity, fear, or despair. Only by allowing yourself ever so tenderly to touch on these feelings and to know them as arisen from conditions and impermanent. When they are gone, what remains? Tomorrow morning, I'll be giving the morning instruction, and we're going to touch especially on basics of practice. The primary object, awareness of objects as they become predominant, are pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, and as they pass away, resting in what remains. It takes a lot of love and courage, but you have the capacity to rest in what remains. For me, one of the themes I'd like to follow in this retreat is from the beautiful sutra. The lines which read, abandon the unwholesome. You can abandon the unwholesome. If it were not possible, I would not ask you to do it. If such abandonment, I'm summarizing, if such abandonment increased suffering, I would not ask you to do it. But because it is beautiful, you can abandon the unwholesome. Cultivate the wholesome. If it were not possible, I would not ask you to do it. To abandon the unwholesome does not mean to deny the unwholesome, but to face it right on. To know fear as fear. Fear in itself is not unwholesome. But to become lost and entrapped in fear with ancient stories, this is unwholesome because it harms you and it harms others. To deny anger, to deny pain, this in itself is unwholesome. To be present with it, with an open heart, this is how we do it. This is how we cultivate the wholesome. If it were not possible, I would not ask you to do it. So for me, this is going to be one focus of the retreat. I invite each of you tonight, as you meditate, or in the morning, to reflect deeply on what is the radiant, pure spring within you. In other words, what is beautiful within you? What is your strength? Where is love? What can you depend upon in this challenging time? Might you even be able to say thank you for the challenges you were given, for the learning that they are asking you to deepen into? It's not easy. It's not what anyone would have chosen. But can you become increasingly aware of the not so rare moments of beauty? The generosity of people around you, the kindness, and the radiance and power of your own heart, your own deep spring of love. I'm just looking at the timing here. This will be one of the themes of the retreat for me, uncovering this deep spring. And the way we uncover it, not by denial of pain, discomfort, fear or confusion, of loneliness or powerlessness, but by opening compassionately to these within each, without trying to fix, simply get present with them. I hope for us to look together at this simultaneity of experience, truly opening to the non-dual, where the compassionate heart can truly hold everything, and the wisdom mind can settle in to that deep awareness of its true awakened essence. My purpose tonight is simply to inspire, not so much to teach. Tomorrow morning we will come to the teaching. Let the Dharma hold you and embrace you. The Dharma in its broadest expression. And remind you that you are free. Remember that at some level, you volunteered for this lifetime. Here, shifting off from pure Buddhism to a bit more metaphysics, maybe we can call it. This is not your first time here. You don't have to remember past lives. You look at the leaves blooming in spring on the trees. Are they the same leaves that were on the tree last year? Are they new leaves? Last year's leaves fell onto the soil and composted the soil. They became part of the energy of the tree out of which the new leaves have sprung. Your sorrows, your fears, your pain, these are the compost upon which the present being that you are has grown. Growing ever stronger and more radiant. You have volunteered at some level. You don't have to take my word for it. You could say, I don't believe that stuff out. That's okay. I'm not trying to push any beliefs on you. But from my perspective, you have volunteered because the earth is awakening, the whole earth. And you have chosen to be part of this awakening, this move into higher consciousness on the earth. Into a consciousness that is much more of a love than a fear. To open yourself out to the power of that love, touching that deep spring that is your essence. In this way, you serve not only yourselves and your immediate loved ones, but literally all beings, the whole universe. By helping the earth move into a consciousness of love. Each one doing his or her own part. If it were not possible, I would not ask you to do it. I love you very much. I look forward to this retreat together. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you. I will end here and return the body to Barbara. Thank you, Aaron.